Good morning. Here's a story. It's about Muriel Hapcock. Muriel Hapcock was a horribly spoiled young lady with no friends, as she had set up a protective ring of conceit around her. A very small number of old school pals recalled her as aloof and unkind, and even family shared her company with the utmost parsimony, so laborious was the obligation. No one was quite sure why she had become thus, but in the end nobody really cared, as long as her misery and pouting did not feature in their already complex lives. After drifting through primary school as a quiet girl with potential, she spent secondary school sitting at the front of the class, silently brooding over her superiority and how she did not really need to be there among underlings. She failed all her exams except for an N for nearly in American Studies GCSE. Quite the achievement. She did menial jobs, washing dishes, which she enjoyed as it gave her the power to erase the presence of others, clearing up animal dejections in a kennels, which was fine because there was little call for human interaction. And one day, she discovered something of a talent for dry cleaning, which meant repetitive work with machines, removing the stains and smells and fluff from others' garments. Here she was in her element. Muriel was bored, however. One day, as she sat staring out of her kitchen window at the car park and concrete panels below, she decided to prove to everyone just how brilliant she was, and how wrong they were to shun and mock Muriel Hapcock. She would commit the perfect murder, avoiding all the silly mistakes she had seen in silly crime series. No one would ever find out. This titillated her to such an extent that she almost broke into a smile, which to you and I would have appeared more like an awkward wince. The errors to be avoided were many but simple. Of course, she must not be connected to the victim. This was the beginner level of Murder 101, failed only by morons. Secondly, she must choose the victim at random so that no discernible pattern could be traced or plotted by the detectives, who she knew would come after her, in their Bentleys and their rubber gloves. Thirdly, she must leave no prints or DNA at the crime scene. Finally, she must make sure not to be seen by anyone or filmed by any camera. She was no fool, Muriel. She would quite rightly be hailed as the greatest unapprehended murderer of all time. As she ironed and plasticized jackets and yellowish smalls, the plan evolved. It was decided that a crammed public place, perhaps a bus or train, would be the perfect setting. Lots of people she didn't know, and all at her random mercy. She would use a standard kitchen knife and wear gloves. This would be a cinch. All that remained was to choose the day. But as she was wary of making any part of this nefarious plot in any way overthought, she decided to undertake the deed as soon as she felt confident enough. That day, would come soon. One of the places she loathed the most of all was the underground train at rush hour. Impossible to sit without other commuters' backsides in your face, and if one stood, the arms were so squashed to one side that even holding on to a bar or strap was almost impossible. This was perfect. The most packed carriage was usually in the dead centre, just in front of an exit or entrance. She knew this from experience. Therefore, one morning at around 8:20 a.m., Muriel entered the middle of the train and found herself almost suffocating, due both to the crush and the mixture of foul morning odours of breath and sweat and people. The black-handled knife was in her jacket pocket, wrapped in a plastic freezer bag. Her gloved hand was itself inside a latex dishwashing glove. She just needed enough space to withdraw the weapon, enough purchase to thrust it in, and then she would drop it to the floor and recoil in horror with all the other faceless commuters. She had sharpened it on purpose. It would cut deep. She had studied human anatomy. Not online, mind. This was another beginner's mistake. And she knew that a deep cut into the lower back or abdomen, preferably to the right, would be fatal enough. The train left the station, and she had to withdraw into herself with all her rigid mental training. They turned a corner, and she did it. The knife shot from her pocket, and without looking up or down or at the faces or anyone near her, she made to mortally injure a fellow passenger. There was a scream, and then several. Despite the awful congestion, people did manage to move away, and there was the knife on the floor, near a rubber glove and a puddle of blood gushing from the inert victim. Someone pulled the emergency cord and the train clattered to a stop at the next station. The driver had called ahead to police, and first responders were there when the doors were prized open. No one was to leave the cordon. Each name was noted, and each faceless traveller was identified. The blade was bagged and tagged as that which had been used to commit this odious crime, and the body was carried away. Over the next few days, the police questioned everyone aboard the wagon, took their prints, DNA samples, and investigated their private and professional lives for stress, motives, divorce, drink, mental health issues, or for previous convictions. Of the 80 people in the direct vicinity of the act, all but one had at least some of the above problems, tensions, or vices, which could be considered as motives for criminal intent. While none were whiter than white. The investigation continued for months. There was a real sense of fear now on public transport. No one felt entirely safe anymore, or that they could really trust a man or woman or even child by their side. People stopped staring at their phones, books, and feet and became ultra-aware and suspicious of the one next to them, and of their every move. The killer never was unmasked, and in the end life went back to normal. To this day, police still wonder who killed Muriel Hapcock and why. It has become something of a textbook example of the unsolved crime and the imperishable blotch on all of their reputations. Quite appropriate. Have a nice day.